Mate, yeah, excuse me.
Hello and welcome back to the What the Falk Sunderland review show. Sunderland did the exact opposite of last weekend and played really quite well actually, but somehow managed to come up short when it comes to putting that round thing that they play with into the back of the net. But nonetheless, as certain as Sunderland are to frustrate and let you down, we're always as certain to make a review show about it, even if it's a 0-0 draw, which does make me question why I'm doing it, but nonetheless. Joining me first and foremost today is the ever faithful Dave, who's just gagging for a 0-0. Bit of chat about 0-0 draw, mate. How are you doing? You all right?
Yeah, very well, mate. Yeah, better than the result suggests anyway.
Yeah, that's good. You had the Rona last week. Are you out of the Rona?
I am, mate. Yeah, I was a little bit rough on the Thursday, but other than that, absolutely fine, to be honest. So, yeah, onwards and upwards. That's twice it's had me that I know about.
Twice as had you. You make it sound like some kind of like demonic witch, um, which it is. Nonetheless, what's your drink of choice tonight, Dave? Have you got a drink of choice?
I haven't, mate. I haven't had anything, actually. So, yeah, I'll have to catch up eventually.
Strange you should ask that because I have. My drink of choice is a Schweppes lemonade with diet lemonade for the record, and it is mixed with some passion fruit dead man's fingers. Not too bad, actually. Nonetheless, moving on, I'm sure people don't want to hear about my choice of drink. It's not sponsored by Dead Man's Fingers, sadly. I have to film the gap somewhere with 0-0, guys. Just play it with me, all right? On the flip side, we have made a loan signing. We're basically Sunderland in January in the form of Michael Bowers from the SAFC Fan TV. Bowers, last time you were on, we lost 1-0. This time you came on, we drew 0-0, so baby steps.
So, well, we haven't scored in 2 appearances I've been on, so I don't think this is boding very well for me. Although I didn't know it was coming on until after the game finished, so I'll take that. It's not my fault.
That is true, but I'm thinking baby steps. You've got 1-0 defeat. Next you might even get a 1-1 draw.
Right, get me on after the playoff final when we've hopefully won it, and then it's next baby steps to a win, I suppose.
I don't think I'll be alive if we win a playoff final, if I've got to be honest. As I attested to before, obviously, it was a really frustrating day. In all seriousness, at the office, it was frustrating. It was. I sound like Carl Winchester there. Much like Charlton a few weeks back, Sunderland absolutely dominated. Missed a hatful of chances, and unlike last week's sort of doubleheader against Fleetwood and Crewe, we weren't able to find that sort of late crucial goal, Dave. The game leaves us sixth. The playoff position's not a million miles away, but it's far from certain, especially with the teams below us. What's your overriding feeling in the aftermath of the game? We're about 4 hours after the end of the game.
Yeah, it's hard not to get flat when you talk about Sunderland at the minute, isn't it? It's
yeah.
Listen, you got to take the positives out of it, haven't you? He showed up the defence. We'll give him that. So we look a lot more solid. We all know how much Bowers loves it when we keep a clean sheet. So we'll get that in there.
I'll wait until my turn for that. You continue.
I personally couldn't care less if we keep a clean sheet as long as we score at least one more than the opposition. They are nice. It is nice to think that in these tight games, how it's tight against 18th in the league, I'm not quite sure. But Michael Appleton does normally get one over on us, to be fair. So I guess we put that hoodoo to rest a little bit. Yeah, it's just annoying. I mean, there was chances there today, wasn't there? We haven't took them. You know, the defence and the goalkeeper, midfield, they've all done their bit. But yeah, a lot of endeavour, but not quite as much quality. And I guess that probably sums up League One in general, really, doesn't it?
It's weird. We've had this sort of period where start of the season we were absolutely clinical. Like our XG, not that I've ever give a shit about XG, and I'm still not sure I understand it, but nonetheless, let's pretend I do because I'm on a podcast now, so I've got to know about my XG. That was good. Basically, was the point I was trying to make. And then the middle bit of the season was like we were kind of as clinical but weaker at the back. Now we're like in the business end of the season, we can't seem to hit a bondo with a banjo. I think that's a phrase, and yet we're quite tight at the back. It's It's a bit of an odd one, but Bowers, obviously you were at the game today, and I think there's always a different feeling compared to like the people like myself and maybe Dave who haven't been at the game today, and the people who are actually in the weigh-in. So as opposed to asking you about your opinion on the game, which I'm sure you're more than welcome to give, should I say, but what was the feeling in the away end after the game?
Well, a lot of the players were clapped off because, well, to a degree they were clapped off because we applauded that we could see that the players tried to win the game. I pointed out on my channel a few weeks ago after the Charlton game that the difference between the draw like that and a draw like this, as opposed to the draw at Wimbledon or the draw against Burton, is that you could see the players gave everything to try and win the game, and it just wouldn't fall for them. So yeah, the atmosphere was pretty good. It probably helped by the fact it was a nice sunny day out, which I'm a sucker for good weather, which we don't normally get in Britain. So I'm going to milk it and take it wherever I can. As far as the game was concerned, I mean, as Dave knows, I do value clean sheets quite highly. I think confidence gets built from the back. Personally, I couldn't give a shit if we score one more goal than the opposition because my heart can't take it when we concede 2 or 3 goals because I hate it. But it's all about the balance. It's all about balancing, having a good defence and good attack at the same time. And in this game, the best way I could describe Son's performance, and as stupid as it sounds, without putting the ball in the back of the net, it was a balanced performance. I thought defensively we were I wouldn't say outstanding. Lincoln didn't really test us that much, but you could attest that too. We didn't let them test us that much. The midfield, I thought, dominated a large part of the game. And then we just couldn't hit a barn door up front, as you said. Jack Clark had 3 chances I can remember, twice in the first half, once in the second. Evans, I'll tell you what right now, because I've criticised, I know, Graham, you're not a particular big Evans fan, and I'm not either. But today, by Evans standards, he had an all right game. He was okay. He actually had a good effort. Say good. It was an effort at least. That's more we usually get from Evans. Jermaine Defoe obviously had an effort which agonisingly just went wide of the post. Jack Clark hit the post, which was a bit annoying. And then Ross Stewart had a great header. I think it was in stoppage time that their keeper somehow managed to keep out. Yes, it's annoying. And I know, like Dave said, it's obviously, it's a tight battle against 18th in the league. For the record, and this is my own opinion, I think both times we played Lincoln in the league, I think they've been awful. I think we were worse at the game up here. Today, Lincoln didn't really do all that much. I mean, the BBC match report, I'm just looking at it here, said they had 8 efforts, 2 of them on target. I don't remember Lincoln having 8 shots, unless you could say a number of them were way wide of the post, which didn't really count as a proper shot. So I thought we dictated large parts of the game. I mean, the frustration is that we seem to have one way or the other, don't we? We can either score lots but concede a shit ton, or we can keep a clean sheet and then can't break the other team down. Or we either play crap, win, or we play well, don't win. It is one of those. For me, I take pride in the fact I think we've kept, 4 clean sheets in the last 5, and the 1 goal we did concede was a daft mistake. There's only really, I think I looked at Alex Neil's games that he's had since he's been here. There's only 2 games we failed to score in, which was Charlton and Lincoln, arguably 2 of the best performances, which is weird. So I think today was a balanced performance, just without the clinical finishing touch, even though that's probably not going to make any sense, but I'm going with it because it sounds half smart.
No, it makes sense. I mean, it's like you bang one in like we did last week, and all of a sudden you go, well, that's better. That's exactly what we wanted last week with the late goal, but the performance as well. And I think it's just because of the time of the season it is, you kind of like, I'm a bit like Alex Neil in the sense that he said it doesn't really matter, just want to win games. I think I'm a bit like that. I think it frustrates me a bit. But I asked you last week, Dave, pardon me, if you felt performances mattered in comparison to points. So on the basis of today's display being the opposite of last week, I'm going to ask the same again, performances or points?
Yeah, I think I said last week, it was all about, at this stage of the season, it's all about points. First 6-12 games of a season, you can kind of try and base what you're going to do on a performance and look at what type of direction you're going to go in. I suppose we've had on the scheme of things, we've had an all right, probably an above average away performance today, bar the fact that we haven't scored a goal. So in that respect, okay, that's a positive. But at this stage of the season, we're Sheffield are now, I think, a point behind, with a game in hand.
Yeah.
So, yeah, it's not pretty, is it? It's going to be a slog. It's going to be absolutely disgusting trying to get that playoff place. But yeah, we just got to keep believing. I mean, at the end of the day, the point becomes a decent point if we win our next couple of games and get a good run going together instead of stop, start, stop, start. But that's been the story of our lives in League One, hasn't it? We kind of look at it, we think, right, we're just getting up ahead of steam, and then all of a sudden we come back down with a 4 or 5 game period. It's never just a 1 or 2 game period, is it?
I think it's funny. I think because obviously there might be people listening going, well, that's a daft question to ask, points of performances, because there's only one answer. And I know what you mean, but you're kind of thinking, I suppose, if today's performance and that kind of almost perfect result, if we'd scored and put that performance in, everything would have been fine and rosy, and you would have gone, well, that's what we've been waiting for. You've got to kind of hope that the frustration of not winning today's game sets us off on some sort of nice run that we can take into the playoffs. But I think, and maybe I'm jumping the gun here, Bowers, but I feel like we've talked a while now, like 6-7 weeks of whatever it's been since Alex Neil's come in, that we need to start putting together a run of form. However, we seem to either play turgid and sneak a win, play well, forget how to score, or just be a bit, if you go back to like the Wimbledon game, maybe in the MK Dons game, just a bit bland. I've got to be honest, I've got a lot of time for Alex Neil. I like everything he said, and I'm not in any way, shape, or form questioning him at this point, far from it. It's just not within my nature to do that at this point. But at what point do we stop discussing? At what point do we stop discussing this? Or we need to make a run of form going into the playoffs and start actually doing it? Because at the minute, would it be fair to say something's just not quite clicking for something with Sunderland and Alex Neil at the minute?
To a degree. Obviously, we've had the last 2 away games we failed to score, so you can't not take that into consideration. It's a funny one, really, because coming out of the ground, I did see that Chef Wed drew away at Gillingham, which, for all that everyone likes to do, and this is something that actually quite annoys me in the fan base, where we like to go, everybody else is going to win every single game because they're not Sunderland. Well, okay, Chef Wed drew at Gillingham, and I would argue Lincoln's better than Gillingham, even though I don't particularly rate Lincoln. They are better than Gillingham. So I'm not saying, by the way, that today was a good result, because it's not, because we should be winning. But I mean, you're right. We've got to start actually doing it. I'm someone who likes to try. I try to call myself balanced. Dave might call me delusionally optimistic. I don't know, but I like to call myself quite considerate and not try to jump the gun every time there's a negative result. But obviously, at this stage of the season, you do need to get wins. You need to get points on the board. I think to sort of discuss your question about points over performance, obviously it's points. But I suppose the argument is, if you keep playing poorly, eventually you won't win games, because that will catch up with you at some point. It's an imbalanced thing, isn't it? By the time, the worst case scenario is, by the time, because we don't play next week, so by the time we play Gillingham, it could be Chef Wed do play, and I think they play Cheltenham at home next week. So that's a game that, on paper, if you're a Chef Wed fan, you should be winning that. So we could be 2 points outside the playoffs. Now, for me, that's not insurmountable. You can overturn that and finish in the playoffs. I'll put a bit of a positivity here in some senses. What gives me a bit of hope, and by the way, I am not saying Sunderland finishing in the playoffs is acceptable. If we finished in them and won them, yes, good enough. But the fact we were in a top 2 race 2 months ago, and now it's gone down from an automatic race to a playoff race, it's disgusting, to be honest. But the way I look at it is, Plymouth have got a horrendous run in towards the end of the season, where they've got to play. I think it's Oxford, Ipswich, Wigan, MK Dons, Sunderland, Wickham. But on the flip side, it might get the best out of their players if they finish in the playoffs. Then fair play to them. They absolutely deserve it. I think Chef Wed have got to play Wickham. I think they've got to play MK Dons, possibly Portsmouth, I'm going to say. I'm not 100% sure on that one. But obviously, the catch side of that is we've got to play Oxford and Plymouth away, and we've got to play Rotherham at home. So it balances itself out in fixtures terms. But at this stage of the season, there's no point talking about we've got to do the run. And I hope that Alex Neil, I do believe, knows that. I do believe he knows that it's all talk is cheap at this point. You've got to do the talking on the pitch. You've got to do the talking when you've got to show that you want to finish in the playoffs. And for me, we've got the squad and the manager to do it. So there's 7 huge. I mean, put it this way: coming with the table at the minute, yes, come next Saturday, we might very well not be in the playoffs. Right now, it could have been worse. It could have been a lot better. Don't get me wrong, but it also could have been a hell of a lot worse. We'll have to wait and see how valuable that point could be.
I didn't actually realise how bad Plymouth's run-in was. I've got it just in front of me here. They've got Cheltenham at home on Tuesday. Fair enough. That's fair enough. That's their game in hand. But then they've got Ipswich away, Oxford at home, Burton away. Fair enough. But their last 4 games of the season are Wycombe away. We know that's not a nice place to go. Us at home. Then they've got Wigan away, and then they've got MK Dons at home, which is not particularly nice. But we'll touch on Chef Wed there a little bit. I believe Chef Wed's game in hand is Fleetwood away, but that doesn't come until like the second last game of the season or third last.
Well,
game of the
their
season.
game in hand. Sorry to interrupt. Their game in hand's effectively next week, isn't it? Because we don't play. Because when Chef Wed go to Fleetwood, I think it's last week, we host Rotherham then, don't we? So,
that's right.
Then their game in hand is pretty much next week, isn't it? And as I said, it's against Cheltenham at home, so it's one of those. I mean, Cheltenham are a funny team though, because they can spring up a result against any one of the so-called top sides of this division. I mean, Accrington got a point there where we didn't expect it, and they've got nothing to play for, so you never know. But I'd be very surprised if Chef Wed didn't win that game, I suppose.
I think this league's a funny one, and Dave, you touched on it last week and said that this league's shit. Anyone can beat anyone.
It is.
And horrible. I think we need to remember, don't we? It's a crap league, and anyone can beat anyone. Pretty much, it's not like the Premier League. But on to a big positive from today, a huge positive actually. I'll come to you first, Dave, and then same to you, Barry, same question. But Patrick Roberts probably looked like the kind of player we thought we would buy in today, or the player that we hoped that he'd develop into. Full of spark, creativity, put a lot of stuff basically on a plate for his team. It's probably the best I've seen him play, following on from the best cameo I've seen from him last week when he got his goal. Patrick Roberts, Dave, how important do you think he's going to be towards the end of the season if he keeps up that level of performance?
Yeah, definitely. He seems to be that guy that has got something a little bit different to a lot of other people in the league. You know, even the creative players.
Je ne sais quoi. A je ne sais quoi.
Yeah, we like that.
I was watching the French rugby earlier. Don't care that they won. Not bothered. It's rugby. Who cares about it? I just wanted to say je ne sais quoi. Didn't even know if it is French.
Well, you got your excuse, didn't you?
C'est la vie.
Very good. Very good.
So Patrick Roberts, who's on loan to a French team in Troyes. Dave, carry on.
Just remind me what the French for Vavavoom was again.
Vroom vroom.
Hey, listen, everyone. This is a bit of entertainment because 0-0's not very entertaining. Let's be honest.
I should have started the podcast. What is it? Japel Graham Falk. Jim Appel Glasgow.
Just record a bit afterwards and say Jim Appel Graham Falk, and then put that on the start of the pod. No one else. Well, I've just ruined it for you, but before then, no one knew that.
Fucking killed it now. So, Dave, do you like Patrick Roberts, mate?
Yeah, to be fair, he's not bad. I mean, he's not French, but he's all right. Anyway, Patrick Roberts, yeah, he's not bad. He's all right.
He's all right. Nice lad, mate. Nice lad. Bowers, you were obviously at the game today, as I tested you before. Patrick Roberts did look really good today, Bowers. I'll openly admit, when he did that kind of 5 juggly up thingies against Fleetwood, I wanted to tear his head off because I hate that, especially when you misplace the pass. But he was really good against Crewe. And I said, if he can keep that up, he's going to be massive, especially with Pritchard missing for the next couple of games potentially. But how good was he today? Because obviously when you're in the ground, there's a bit of a difference between watching something on the telly and a player that actually gets you off your feet. And it felt like Patrick Roberts was the player that we signed to get off our feet, and he did that today, it seems.
Well, I was off my feet anyway because I was standing throughout the whole game in the away end, so it didn't really matter. First of all, on Pritchard, I'll quickly say that. I mean, you probably saw Alex Neil, I think, said yesterday that Pritchard could be back in training as early as next week, and obviously he's going to have to get match sharpness again. But the fact that he's possibly back in training next week is a lot sooner than I thought he would be, so that's actually quite promising. Hopefully, as long as he doesn't get any more niggling injuries. As far as Patrick Roberts is concerned, yes, I think he was my man of the match. I think he was. And I don't think there was anyone, even Corey Evans, surprised to say that myself, I don't think anyone had a bad game But I think Patrick Roberts was the pick of the bunch constantly, time after time after time. He had the Lincoln's left back on toast. He could not deal with him. He didn't know whether he was going to try and dribble past him, cut inside to cross, or whatever it was. He was quite unpredictable in a lot of ways of what he was going to do. And the burst of pace he had to get past the opposition fullback was really promising and encouraging. He's the type, and I'll say this now, I think is his contract till the end of the season. Is that right? Yeah, well, it is. Okay, so for me, give him a new deal. Because I don't know how hard it's going to be for us to try and give him a new deal if we don't go up. But I think for me, I think that where we could have an advantage with Patrick Roberts is the fact that we could offer him a home, because he hasn't had that. Let's be honest. He hasn't had that for probably since Celtic, when he's been there for at least one season, maybe 1.5 seasons on the bounce.
I think he did two. I think he did 2 on loan. I think.
Celtic, yeah, but he's been all over the place, hasn't he? He's been like Middlesbrough, been at Derby, been at Norwich, been at Troyes, as you like to call them.
Troyes.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I've used it now. He's been all over the place on loan. So the prospect of us giving him a permanent home might be what he wants at this stage of his career, when he's been moving around so much and so frequently, with so little time in between moves. Yeah, Patrick Roberts, I really like the look of him. I think you don't. I mean, let's be honest, he's been above this level for most of his career so far, even with all the loans he's had. He apparently did all right at Derby last season, and I think, and he's been in the Premier League. I know he didn't like play many games, but I think Premier League clubs, when Norwich were in the Premier League, they saw something in him. When Middlesbrough were in the Championship, they saw something in him. Derby did as well. I don't think he would have ever expected to find himself down in League One. And I think if you give Patrick Roberts, say, a 2-year contract in the summer with an option of a further year or something, which I think is quite realistic for us to offer if we're in League One, especially, then I would do whatever we could to try and keep hold of Patrick Roberts. And I like the look of him. And to be fair, now this is obviously the big if, we don't know this yet, but if you do finish in the playoffs, Patrick Roberts is someone I would be looking to have in that match day, in that starting 11 straight away. I think Patrick Roberts, and especially, even I know you might want to touch on Jack Clark later or not, but if you don't, then I'll do it for you. Jack Clark and Patrick Roberts in the playoffs are 2 players I would hate to have playing against us. So I think that's the crucial step, finishing the playoffs. And I think the squad we've got, especially if Pritchard comes back from injury, especially if you've got Broadhead coming back, and you've got Stewart up there, Defoe get a bit more match fitness, Roberts and Clark will be more match sharp. God, I'm trying to talk us into a delusional sense of optimism.
To be fair, though, it's like when you mention players like that and you look at the strength that we have, sometimes it's quite easy to flip, pardon me, quite easy to flip back into that idea that, oh, we're shite and all the players are rubbish and because of the consistent failure. But especially across the front, that kind of front three. I mean, for me, the big one for Patrick Roberts, and it was a big if, and it probably still is an if for me, because I want to see more of today.
Yeah, he has to keep this up. We'll make that clear, yeah.
But for me, and I feel very blasphemous saying this because I love him, but Aidan McGeady is probably, based on the injuries he's got, going to play a very small part, if any part at all. And we need a replacement for the likes of Aidan McGeady. And if Patrick Roberts genuinely doesn't, as you said before, want to have a home somewhere, which I'm sure he does, he's 25, he's about to hit his prime, he's a perfect replacement for him. Perfect.
I completely agree. I mean, I'm someone who really likes Aidan McGeady. I like the standards that he tries to keep up around the club, but we've got to face the facts. He's 36, probably coming on 37 at this point, or 35, 36. Either way, he's a very old man in football terms. Yeah. So I think to replace Aidan McGeady, I think obviously is not an easy thing to do in a lot of ways in terms of technical ability. But I think Patrick Roberts obviously is a much younger Aidan McGeady version, but he's also got more pace than McGeady had for us. I mean, I know McGeady probably had that earlier in his career, but certainly at Sunderland, he's on the latter stages of it. And obviously as a winger, especially winger is probably the position you rely most on your pace to get you through games.
One thing I'm surprised that isn't getting more attention, if I'm honest, apart from the Sunderland fan base, is the way Ross Stewart's been kind of manhandled the past few weeks. I'll come to you with this one, Dave, because obviously for obvious reasons, but he's getting ragged about off defenders. There's a few times a day when you could say at a higher level, like that might have been called for penalty because of pulling his shirt. I mean, there's times last week when some of it was clumsy, but he's getting clocked in the face, he's getting his shirt pulled, he's getting ragged all over because it's like the only way they can handle him. How frustrating is that going to be, not just for us, but how frustrating is that going to become for him?
You'll know better than most. He's Scottish, so he's got that mentality. I think he probably secretly loves it, to be honest. I get the feeling he doesn't look He looks gangly, doesn't he? We've alluded
Mhm.
to it before, but I think he is quite a strong fella, to be fair. And I think he quite enjoys that physical aspect of the game. I mean, I'm sure he'd prefer it was a little bit fairer. Do you know what I mean? I'm sure being
You're not
humbled
going to
to the
get that from
ground.
League One refs, are you?
No.
Exactly that. To be honest, hey, we had was it the Liverpool? I think I mentioned it last week. Actually, the Liverpool game, they had VAR, and I'm sure VAR got 3 decisions wrong, and they've had the benefit of 44 replays. So we got no chance with League One refs. Let's be honest. Yeah, this is the bit where I've got the confidence in Alex Neil, because okay, he's came in, he's found a problem with the back, and he's done something about it, and it seems to be working. His next problem is, right, people are finding out ways of defending against us, and how do we now score goals? Do we have to drop Stewart deeper, get people in behind him? You know, Clark's had a few chances today, so almost the plan has potentially worked if he's decided to get Clark into them dangerous areas and stuff like that. He just hasn't finished the ball, unfortunately, which in another week he could have had a brace. So yeah, the problem is these are the problems that you want in the first 10 games of the season, aren't they?
Yeah.
You've then got 36 games to put it right and get a consistent way of playing football, where unfortunately, as per usual,
I find
chasing our tails.
the Alex Neil thing quite interesting. Like, I think, especially with Johnson, right? Johnson was admittedly 50-50. I very rarely met people who were like, I think he's all right. I met people who were like, hate him. That was me talking to myself in the mirror. And people who really actually quite liked him and felt quite positive about him and enjoyed the way that he spoke, and he's kind of deep.
It was one extreme or the other, wasn't it?
It was, yeah. People like really loved him or they didn't. And obviously Jack Ross, I think, was a bit more mighty, especially towards the 1-1 phase of like March, April time, when the automatic promotion started coming off its wheels and stuff like that. But for the first time in a while, I feel like everyone, I'm sure there'll be people that disagree with me, but I think a good bulk from what you can see online and at matches and from having conversations with your friends and your family, seem to be quite on board with Alex Neil being the man to take us forward, kind of no matter what. And I know people felt the same way with Johnson last season, but there was murmurs towards the end of last season after the Lincoln game that people were going, something's not right with Johnson. With Alex Neil, despite the fact that the performances have been poor when we've won, we've played well and not managed to score. And there's all those red warning signs that you would normally be like, oh, crap. It feels like the marriage of maybe Alex Neil and Sunderland in time might not be this season, which might, in the early stages, might be quite good. It mirrors the fan base quite well. I feel like people have some kind of trust in Alex Neil where they want him to take us forward. Even if we don't go up next season, it's just a question of if he wants to.
Yeah, I mean, if you look at it this way, I mean, did Alex Neil expect to find himself down in League One? No, and I think it's probably because of the size of the club. And this is where I disagree with people who say that size of clubs don't matter, because they do. They absolutely do. If size of the club doesn't matter, we would not have Alex Neil as our manager. I'm telling you, we would not be having the likes of Patrick Robertson, Jack Clark in League One. We would not have Alex Pritchard in League One. Size of the club does matter, and I think that in that regard, if I'm trying not to give up on this season yet, because the thought of a 5th season in League One makes me sick. But if we have to be down here a 5th season, then if you're having players like Patrick Roberts, I mean, Jack Clark probably won't be here next season because he's on loan. But if we're not getting promoted, Patrick Roberts, I could see being here if we really want to give him a deal and he wants to have a home. I think that plays into our favour. Alex Pritchard, I think Alex Pritchard could still be here. It just depends on how, I mean, you never know. Maybe if we don't go up, we want him to be injured for most of the going into the summer, so no one wants to take him, and then we could actually have him here next year to be a conspiracy theorist. The flip side of that is Dan Neil goes, Ross Stewart goes, but regardless, Alex Neil, I think, his straight talking nature is what a lot of people like about him. I'm on the other side of the fence to you with Lee Johnson. I did quite like him. But as you know, I pride on clean sheets, and we conceded far too many goals under Johnson for my liking. It was far too open. Alex Neil, I think, is trying to get a good balance, as I go back to what I was saying before, to make sure that we're solid at the back. But at the same time, it's not like today we were solid at the back, but we didn't not create chances, if that makes sense.
We
still had the chances to win. So
it's
one of those where Alex Neil can go on.
There was a period of time under Sam Allardyce when we all remember it gloriously, but there was a period of time when we were shit. And I mean, really shit. And he came in the October time when we were getting beat like 5-2, 6-2 off Everton, and it was bollocks. And he banged on by keeping clean sheets, and you're thinking, right, okay, fair enough. I think we had like a 0-0 draw against Bournemouth or something at home, and everyone's going, bloody hell, this is not improving. Eventually, it came to dividends. As soon as he sorted that back line out and we weren't conceding, you could let the flair players go. And obviously, during the week, I had Tom from the Times, big Lincoln fan, on the preview show. And he was asking me why he felt like would held back Patrick Robertson, and so on and so forth. And I'd said, like, don't know. And then I tried to explain it, and then realizing that maybe Alex Neil was just trying to show the backup so he can unleash these players up top. I don't know. Which goes to show why keeping it tight at the back is important. And I think ultimately, I know, like Dave said, I wouldn't mind winning every game 5-4. I'm kind of in the same agreement, but I think Alex Neil's probably, he's made us solid defensively. You can say what you like about it. Like, he's got Dennis Serkin, Carl Winchester, and Bailey Wright keeping clean sheets as a back three, which surprises me myself, because I think I don't think Winchester's a centre half, and I don't think Serkin's I don't rate Serkin that highly, truth be told. I certainly don't rate him as a left-sided centre-back, but he's keeping clean sheets, which is great. But time almost up. So I can ask a sad question, or I can ask a good question. I'm going to ask a good question rather than the sad one. I've got a good question that I wanted to ask here, but it's ultimately going to leave it on a really sour note. So I'll come to you first, Dave. I've got 3 minutes or so to go, because I still haven't paid for Zoom Premium. Subscribe, and so I can upgrade to Zoom Premium. That wouldn't really make a difference. It's fine if you don't.
Sorry, Dave, you're not getting your 20 pence then.
Sorry, Falk. But I think it's a question I haven't asked for a few weeks, but I think the closer we get to the end of the season, Dave, I have to ask the question. What does today's result mean in the context of Sunderland season?
Today's result probably... It isn't a day's result, is it? One thing Michael said for seasons now is it's all about the silly slip-ups during the course of the season, the stupid games at home against whoever. There's too many to pick from, getting beat off Bolton 6-0 away from home. Oh, there's any
Lincoln as an example.
Yeah, exactly. There's just numerous occasions. So today's result, in the grand scheme of things, listen, I hate to say it. I absolutely hate to say it. Whether we get into the playoffs or not, I think it's another season in League One.
Yes, it are. If I'm honest, I hate to depress listeners, but I think that, the question I was originally going to ask, so I'll ask it anyway. I'll leave you the final word, Michael. Really annoyingly, I'm seeing Wigan win again today. Not because I hate Wigan, it's just annoying, because ultimately I'm looking at also Luton going third in the Championship. There's always one club that manages to get it together in one season at League One level when we just can't do it. We muck it up by hook or by crook. You've got 2 minutes to sum it up, which is not enough time bowers. But why do we keep not getting it right, and why are we scrambling for the playoffs at this point?
I'll refer back to something that Dave referred back to what I've said before, if that makes sense, which is the stupid results. Well, this season alone, draws away at Fleetwood when you're 2-0 up, draws away at Accrington and Shrewsbury when they're down to 10 men, losing at home to Lincoln, not beating Lincoln. Like I said, I don't particularly rate Lincoln that highly. That's not me trying to be disrespectful, but I just thought Lincoln was shite when they beat us up here. I just thought we were shiter.
I agree.
Today I thought they were really poor. I think they played for a point all game, which, to be fair to them, it worked. They got it. So, but it's those two games in particular. Losing at home to Doncaster, losing away at Cheltenham from a winning position, drawing away at Wimbledon. It's nothing. You could even afford the 5-1 at Rotherham and the 3-0 at Sheffield, or 4-0 at Portsmouth if you don't drop points in the silly games against sides down the bottom. Those are the results that keep you in here. For me, look, put it this way: if we've got 4 home games left out of 7. We could still finish in the playoffs. I still think we've got the squad and the manager to do it, but knowing our luck, it might be a 5th season in League One. But if Alex Neil's here and the players that we've got that are deemed Championship quality are still here for the most part, there's every hope next year could finally be our year after 10 years.
God, it's always the hope that kills us. And with that, I'll leave
Always is.
it. I'll leave it with the hope killing us. Thanks for tuning in as always. Not easy to do a 0-0 draw, but Dave, thanks very much. Michael, thanks very much.
No worries.
Pleasure. Cheers.